15 Things You Never Knew About Anthony Head. Most people know Anthony Head as Rupert Giles from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. The wise mentor. The trusted father figure. The man who helped guide Buffy through some of television's most iconic moments. But what if I told you that long before he was hunting vampires, Anthony Head was already famous for something completely unexpected? Or that he once walked away from one of television's biggest shows? Not because of money, not because of controversy, but because of a decision that changed his life forever? Or that decades after Buffy ended, he somehow managed to reinvent himself and become famous all over again? Today we're uncovering 15 fascinating things you probably never knew about Anthony Head. And some of them might completely change how you see the actor behind Giles. The first surprise begins before Buffy, before Hollywood, and before Anthony Head was even a household name. Because acting was practically written into his DNA. Anthony Stewart Head was born on February 20, 1954, into a family where creativity wasn't just encouraged, it was a way of life. His father was a respected documentary filmmaker. His mother was an actress. Even his older brother, Murray Head, would go on to become a successful actor and singer. While many performers spend years trying to figure out what they want to do with their lives, Anthony grew up surrounded by storytelling from the very beginning. But here's something most fans don't know. Before Buffy made him internationally famous, Anthony Head had already become one of the most recognizable faces in Britain. And he did it through coffee. Yes, coffee. In the 1980s, Anthony starred in a series of Nescafe Gold Blend commercials that became a cultural phenomenon across the UK. What started as simple advertisements turned into an ongoing romantic storyline that viewers followed with surprising dedication. People genuinely wanted to know whether the two characters would end up together. The commercials became so popular that they generated national attention and transformed Anthony Head into a familiar face years before Buffy ever existed. Most actors would have struggled to escape being known as the coffee commercial guy. Anthony did the opposite. He kept building. And eventually, that journey led him to one of television's most unexpected opportunities. When Buffy the Vampire Slayer premiered in 1997, nobody knew it would become a cultural phenomenon. The premise sounded strange. A teenage girl fighting vampires while dealing with high school drama wasn't exactly a guaranteed hit. Yet within a few years, the series had become one of the most influential shows of its generation. What many viewers don't realize is that Giles wasn't originally expected to become one of the show's most beloved characters. Buffy was the star. The story revolved around her. But Anthony brought something unique to Giles. Instead of portraying him as a boring authority figure, he made him relatable, funny, flawed, and deeply human. Fans quickly connected with the character, and before long Giles became the emotional backbone of the entire series. But then something happened that shocked viewers. At the height of Buffy's success, Anthony Head stepped back from the show. Many fans assumed there was drama behind the scenes. There wasn't. The truth was far more personal. While filming Buffy in the United States, Anthony was spending long periods away from his family in England. His daughters were growing up, and he realized he was missing important moments in their lives. So he made a decision that many actors would never make. He chose family over fame. Instead of staying in Hollywood full-time, he returned home. And looking back, that decision says a lot about who Anthony Head really was. Interestingly, both of Anthony's daughters eventually followed in his footsteps. Emily Head would become known for roles in television series like The In-Betweeners. Daisy Head would go on to build her own successful acting career, appearing in major productions including fantasy dramas and international television projects. Without realizing it, Anthony had started an acting dynasty. But perhaps the most surprising thing about his career is what happened after Buffy. Most actors struggle to escape a role that iconic. Anthony Head somehow managed to do it twice. In 2008, he appeared as King Uther Pendragon in Merlin. For younger audiences, he wasn't Giles anymore. He was the powerful and intimidating ruler of Camelot. The role introduced him to an entirely new generation of viewers who had never watched Buffy. And remarkably, many of them had no idea he had once played Rupert Giles. Then came another unexpected reinvention. Years later, Anthony Head joined the cast of Ted Lasso as Rupert Mannion. And suddenly, audiences found themselves experiencing something strange. They hated him. Not Anthony Head, the character. Rupert Mannion was manipulative, arrogant, and often infuriating. The performance was so convincing that many viewers forgot they were watching the same actor who had once played one of television's most beloved father figures. That's the mark of a truly great performer. He can make you love him in one role and despise him in another. And Anthony had mastered that skill throughout his career. Another little-known fact is that Anthony was never limited to television. Over the years, he worked extensively in theater, radio dramas, voice acting, and film. While many actors focus on a single medium, Anthony seemed determined to explore every corner of storytelling. He even had a passion for music. Many Buffy fans remember Giles occasionally singing on the show, but fewer realized that Anthony Head possessed serious musical talent outside of acting as well. In many ways, he was a complete performer. Actor, singer, stage performer, voice artist, storyteller. Yet despite all those accomplishments, people who worked with him often described something else entirely: kindness. Again and again, colleagues spoke about his generosity, professionalism, and warmth. In an industry where ego often dominates headlines, Anthony developed a reputation for being approachable and grounded. And perhaps that's why his passing affected so many people. When Anthony Head died in June 2026 at the age of 72, tributes arrived from every corner of the entertainment world. Fans remembered Giles. Others remembered Uther. Some remembered Rupert Mannion. And many remembered a career that had somehow remained relevant across multiple generations. Very few actors achieve that. Most become associated with one era, one role, one moment in time. Anthony Head became part of several generations of television history. And that's what makes his story so remarkable. He wasn't simply the actor who played Giles. He wasn't simply the king from Merlin. He wasn't simply the villain from Ted Lasso. He was an artist who spent decades reinventing himself while staying true to the values that mattered most: family, craft, and storytelling. So the next time someone mentions Anthony Head, remember this. The man most people associate with a single role actually lived one of the most fascinating and versatile careers in television history. And the deeper you look into his story, the more surprising it becomes. Because Anthony Head wasn't just a television star. He was a television legend. And perhaps that's what makes Anthony Head's story so extraordinary. Not the fame, not the awards, not even the unforgettable characters that made him a household name across multiple generations. Because if there's one thing we've learned throughout this documentary, it's that Anthony Head was far more than the roles he played. To some, he was Rupert Giles, the wise mentor who guided Buffy through her darkest battles. To others, he was the powerful and complicated King Uther Pendragon. And for a newer generation, he was the charming yet deeply manipulative Rupert Mannion in Ted Lasso. But behind every character was a man who spent more than 5 decades dedicated to his craft. A man who understood something many people in Hollywood never do. That success isn't about staying famous. It's about continuing to grow, continuing to learn, continuing to reinvent yourself. Throughout his life, Anthony Head proved that one successful role didn't have to define an entire career. When audiences thought they knew exactly who he was, he surprised them. When one chapter ended, another began. And while many actors become trapped by a single iconic role, Anthony Head somehow turned every stage of his career into an opportunity to evolve. Yet perhaps even more impressive than his professional achievements was the way he lived his life. At the height of his success, he made choices that didn't always make headlines. Choices that put family before career. Choices that reflected the values he carried throughout his life. And maybe that's why so many people respected him. Not just as an actor, but as a person. When news of his passing spread around the world, people didn't only talk about his talent. They spoke about his kindness, his warmth, his generosity, his professionalism. The qualities that leave a lasting impression long after the cameras stop rolling. Because fame fades. Headlines disappear. Television shows eventually come to an end. But the impact you leave on others can last forever. Today, millions of fans continue to revisit the stories Anthony Head helped bring to life. They continue to discover his work. They continue to quote his lines. And they continue to connect with characters that remain just as powerful today as they were decades ago. That's the beauty of storytelling. The people behind the characters may one day leave us, but the stories remain. And through those stories, their legacy lives on. Anthony Head may be gone, but the impact of his work continues to inspire audiences around the world. And that's a legacy few actors ever achieve. Now I'd love to hear from you. When you think of Anthony Head, what role comes to mind first? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this documentary, don't forget to subscribe to Behind the Spotlight. Because every celebrity has a public story. The interviews, the headlines, the moments the world gets to see. But those moments rarely tell the whole story. Here at Behind the Spotlight, we look beyond the fame, beyond the headlines, and beyond the image presented to the world. We uncover the untold journeys, hidden struggles, remarkable comebacks, and fascinating stories that shaped some of the world's most recognizable names. Because every legend has a story. And sometimes, the most fascinating part is the chapter nobody talks about. Until next time, stay curious, because there's always another story waiting to be uncovered behind the spotlight.